give folks probably 30 seconds, another 45 seconds, a minute. We'll get this going. Right after lunch, feel free to stand, stretch at any time, move to the couch if you need to. It's not going to disrupt the session. We're a lively bunch. All right, we can get going. So welcome, Patrick Nunes, Director of Global Communications and Design at Rotary International. Have the pleasure to be joined by, well, two of the gifts that Gala has given me, Alessandra and Maria, and Hyunjung, who's a great colleague of mine. Fun fact, Hyunjung loves dancing. She did a great job last night. Both Maria and Alessandra served the board of Gala with me. Great experiences, great laughs, lots of hard discussions, a pandemic that hit us all, which was very intriguing. But let's get this party started, no pun intended, or all pun intended. So I'll ask them to quickly talk a little bit about themselves, and we'll dive right into how clients are looking at AI, and we're going to cover a few topics such as the speed of change. We're going to talk about relationship with vendors. We're going to talk about approaches and processes, quality, how we are perceiving quality, and we're going to talk about internal relationships within our organizations, our companies. So Hyunjung, I'll start with you to introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Hyunjung Lee. I run the localization operations at Rotary International. He is part of our group, and he introduced me to Gala, and I'm very happy to be here. It's been a great community so far.
Hopefully this is working. Yeah, good. Maria Jesus de Rivadíaz. I head up Global Language Services at Workday, and we're part of the globalization and localization team. My team comprises 30 language managers, language quality, and language engagement managers. I've been living in Ireland 25 years, same tenure as in the localization industry. Have been working on LSPs up until 15 months ago when I joined Workday. And yeah, that's me. Alex.
Hello, everybody. My name is Alessandra Binazzi, and I'm the consultant representative at this table. So I'm a globalization, localization consultant. I work really primarily with client-side organizations. I've built and scaled localization operations at a few different companies of different sizes. And so I've transitioned that knowledge and skill now to supporting a broader range of clients in building and primarily scaling operations in localization and globalization.
Thank you. Well, so let's get things going and level set. So where would you say the companies we're working with or the companies we're part of, where are they in the AI journey, especially generative AI, exploring, flirting, dating, married, cheating on?
Sure. Well, as a consultant, of course, I see a really wide range. I'm seeing a little bit of everything. And of course, it also depends on the field that the client, the organization operates in, but I work with clients who are in tech, but also non-tech companies. And especially in the non-tech company, you see the level of maturity being lower. So I see everything from companies that are not even talking about it at all, to organizations that are starting to play around with it, but mostly through solutions that are provided by the organization, so like Copilots or maybe Grammarly that has some AI functionality, or programs like Canva that also has some generative AI built into it. So that's another fairly low level of maturity. And then going into the more specialized solutions, so experimenting with those. So a lot of clients that are experimenting with solutions that their partners are offering, so LSPs or technology companies in our space in localization. And then I have a few large organizations that are full scale building own solutions using their own data. So I'm seeing a little bit of everything because this is still fairly new. So my role has been, I've seen an evolution also in the services that I'm being asked to provide. So from the most basic of pure education, so that they can understand these technologies better, a really important service is helping the organizations find use cases to start working with these technologies, so finding POCs pretty much. Partnering, finding the right partners in our space to work with, and then ultimately implementing some of the solutions for the bigger clients.
And I think you can actually see the whole spectrum, even within the same company. Like, Workday has AI in its DNA. And we have teams, a very strong AI and ML team that has been working with large language models for decades, well before ChatGPT and all of that. And they have Gen AI truly embedded and operationalized into everything they do. And then there is the globalization and localization team, where we're really at the exploratory, kind of early experimenting stages. We're looking at automated language quality evaluations, TM cleaning through large language models, etc. But it's also, we're also trying to find kind of partners within the organization and kind of learn from the rest of the other teams who are kind of far more advanced and see what we can leverage. So I think like most of you, I come here with more questions than answers, and I hope that's okay. I'm confident that between us all, we will figure this out anyway, so yeah.
At Rotary, I think to use Patrick's analogy, we are dating around. So we are also, on the one hand, dating around because there are many teams that are starting to use generative AI for their own purposes, but we're being set up on a lot of blind dates by our constituents. Rotary being a humanitarian organization with volunteer membership, the staff have to listen to our members. They're not our customers or clients per se, but they are our very important members. And when they find something they're excited about, they come to us and say, try this, I found this is a great solution. So we're being set up on a lot of those kinds of blind dates where we have to, sort of meet the AI, see what it's like, if we're a good match, etc. So we're feeling it out on a lot of fronts.
We have a variety of choices, right? When you look at AI, a variety of choices. And it's overwhelming. The landscape is very overwhelming. It keeps coming up every single day. And not everybody is already ready to establish best practice or guidelines. So how do you, when you're looking into it, flirting with it, or blind dating it, how do you establish the difference among the offerings, and how do you choose the vendors, AI vendors or applications embedded in AI?
If I can, I guess, carry on from where I left off. A lot of the time, we are not actively going out and comparing solutions. Rather, we're being suggested solutions and testing them out and seeing if those solutions that were suggested are fit for the purpose they were suggested for. So we're more sort of vetting each one as we go along than having this smorgasbord that we actively look around and compare. So it's the question that actually is something that we need to ask ourselves and learn from other members of Gala to get the answers for. So, to answer your question.
Hello, yes, I'm here. To answer your question, how do we differentiate? With great difficulty, because nobody, it's not standardized, the services are called differently, the solutions are customized a lot of the time, and this is when, of course, when we're partnering with different providers, be it language technology, be it language services. So it's really difficult to discern and compare, because it's not apples to apples. There is a need, I think, from us as the industry to little by little kind of look at standardizing how we call things, or what the service, the scope of the services or the solutions are, etc. For us, obviously, there's a couple of really big considerations. One is kind of data security and data privacy, because obviously we handle a lot of our customer data, and we kind of leverage a lot of our peers in the industry to understand what are they doing, who did they work with, did this work, did this not work, etc. So yeah, it's, I guess, kind of trial and error and differentiate, experiment, and move fast, move really fast in that experimentation.
And what would you say, if we look back for us on the client side, from our perspective, how do you see, how similar or not do you think this evolution or the journey of AI is when compared to the advent of NMT, for example? How different or how similar are those from the client perspective?
From my perspective, it's different. It's different and it's similar. So on the one hand, it's different because of the speed. It's like it's completely, it's unreal. And companies like Workday, we grow fast, we move fast, and we are expected to deliver on solutions and innovation really, really quickly. On the other hand, the change management aspect of this transformation is very similar to the advent of MT in terms of changing our workflows, upskilling or maybe reskilling rather than upskilling the linguists and everything else, kind of creating different expectations around quality as well. So to me, they're similar and different depending which lens you look at them.
I completely agree on the expectation piece. I think that's a very similar dynamic that we find ourselves in. These tools are now available to people very easily. It's the same as Google Translate, where everybody would just go to Google Translate and use it and then maybe publish that content without any validation. We're finding the same thing with Gen AI. So even setting that expectation, and education is the same, the same effort as usual. Education is a very big piece of localization and what we have to do throughout an organization. To set expectations, to understand why it's still important to use structured processes when using these technologies and not just, a free-for-all. And quality is really different in this case, and we have not figured it all out. And what I'm seeing is, and what is a little bit scary, is that there's no accountability around quality, for these applications. In localization with MT, with anything that has translation tied into it, people look at localization as the quality gatekeeper, right? But with the application of Gen AI, not always, right? And we take quality very seriously, but other functions don't. They don't really measure and look at quality and try to affect quality as much as we do. We have scientific methods to do this, but with Gen AI, they're not developed yet, and people just don't seem to care as much. So who's actually accountable for quality when it comes to these new technologies?
Interesting. And speaking of quality, from the end user, right, our clients, the people that we support or sell to or offer services to, when it comes to quality, do you believe that the level of expectation from the end user in terms of quality has been affected by AI? Meaning, do you think there's more tolerance for not so good quality or not such high standards of quality? Because we uphold that very closely. It's very important to us. But what about the end user?
I think Rotary is an interesting and rather exceptional case because we have not a clientele but a captive audience of members, and they feel very invested in the quality of communications that we deliver. So our main product as the sort of administrative secretariat structure supporting our members in Rotary clubs around the world is mainly communications. So it's aimed at them, it's for them, it's to enable them, and they have been in Rotary sometimes often for decades. And so they know their content, they feel they own their content. So whenever there is any kind of quality issue with the communications that we send out, we hear about it from our members, from senior leaders. And so quality is a really important sort of standard for us. And it's still, even with NMT, something that we don't really use for external-facing communications because of the quality issue. So if we, because my team is basically the LSP for the entire organization, we get all sorts of different requests. And one of the first things that we have to ask ourselves when we source that project is this for an internal audience? How big is the audience? What is the shelf life of this thing? And if it's an external-facing, long shelf life, large exposure kind of thing, we will not use machine translation. So I think in that sense, I think the general public is more tolerant of lower quality, and the insiders, the staff, for example, know that if it's something large or low ROI, quick turnaround, we will use machine translation, and they're okay with that. But our end users really aren't okay with that yet.
And I agree, agree and disagree, as in terms of our own audience. And we're reimagining our whole approach to quality at the moment. Whereas in the past, it was one size fits all and aim for perfection, we're really taking a kind of a hard look at our different assets, the different content that we handle, what are the expectations? We're spending a lot of time with the markets, with the stakeholders in the markets, with the customers to understand what is the level of tolerance, how much use does this have, is data. Like we're just looking at a lot of the customer experience and user experience surveys, etc., to define what is the importance, the business impact, the potential kind of revenue, or kind of creation of revenue from a piece. And we do apply machine translation across the board, but with different levels of post-editing, different levels of quality assurance, or maybe a third-party review that goes on to that. And that's, I guess, what we're using to kind of bring basically to turn the dial up or down in terms of the quality. But it's very important that we have the understanding from the markets, the customers, the users, what their tolerance is for machine translation. Be super transparent. If you're releasing something that is only machine translation, tell them. I think Expedia was talking about the customer support chatbots earlier, and they were very transparent with customers. Like, this is a chatbot, basically, and it's machine translation only, so you know what you're gonna get, right? But we're also investing a lot of time to connect with the markets and the customers after the fact, after they've had a chance to interact with the content, with the product, with whatever it is, to understand what's their level of satisfaction. And again, we will adjust the dial from a quality perspective depending on what we see. But yeah, that's kind of our approach. Definitely a fit for purpose. I know there's been a couple of sessions on fit for purpose quality, and really look at your whole content ecosystem and decide where do you want to kind of put the effort and kind of invest more or less. At least that's our approach.
But what's important that you're doing, Maria, is also looking at quality from the user perspective, right? Which is something that, regardless of whether the content was emptied or gen-I'd or whatever, it's really the satisfaction of the end user that you need to measure and value the most, rather than your internal metrics necessarily. I mean, the internal metrics can be used to control, but ultimately what you want is to monitor and make adjustments based on what your users are actually perceiving as quality.
It's interesting. When it comes to our partnership with vendors, how their usage of AI impacts or affects your decision-making process? Like, how much visibility do you need to have about the specifics of them using different AI tools and capabilities?
I'll start, but I hope nobody's falling asleep. I'm just trying to look around the room, making sure everybody's still with us. Yeah, okay. Okay, coming from my background, I know how absolutely critical a strong partner, LSP or language technology, is to the success of a customer. And I feel that very close to my heart. So it's super important that all of our partners have invested, whether they're experimenting or they're kind of doing a bit more than experimenting. Like, we rely a lot on them telling us, hey, we've developed these, do you want to try it? Do you want to be early adopters? Do you want to? actually this other customer is doing something else and it's working for them. Do you want to try it? Do you want to connect with them? So the partnership, it's even more important, and it's strengthened by the fact that the LSPs in this case are AI users, developers, and promoters as well.
I think there's, excuse me, there's a little bit more, well, trust has become more of an issue, I think, now. And it's not just because somebody might be using AI and not telling us, but because nobody really knows how AI works, right? So even if you wanted to be transparent as a vendor, how transparent can you be about something you don't fully have a grasp on? So right now at Rotary, our biggest concern when we're trying to partner up with any kind of AI solution vendor, excuse me, is to, it's basically our legal team. They want to read all of the documentation. They want to go after every little fine point and see if there's anything that could make Rotary liable. And so liability is the main lens that our organization is looking at it through. And that is necessarily limited because the vendors that are using AI themselves don't really either know what to lay out in the documentation or how to lay out, and they do their best, but there's always some uncertainty. And I think that's the main sort of difficulty right now when we are trying to select a vendor as well. We don't know how much we can trust them, not necessarily because of what they're doing, but because of the technology itself being so opaque in ways.
Yeah, it's very interesting to have that conversation. And speaking of those relationships internally, we found ourselves very recently at Rotary, looking at solutions for interpretation. And of course, being creative people as we are, start already hearing people saying, just don't say AI, use another term, because that's freaking people out. So it's like we're finding loopholes already in the system because to avoid some sort of that resistance. It's still the same thing. We know legal might not, but yeah, they do want to look very close into everything. So it's still about vendors. Do you think, what's that difference then, right? And Maria, I think you touched on this about the solution and looking into the solutions that are offered, the transparency. What's the difference between genuine, solid solution versus using AI as a shiny object that everybody should love and jump on board?
You mean in terms of how a potential buyer discerns between them, or? I'd say a well-seasoned buyer, yes. No, it is difficult, and I think it's proceed with caution always. And of course, there's legal compliance, security, privacy, all of those things that we have to take into account. But I think if you are presented with something that looks good, maybe it's been kind of, the proof of concept has been done with someone else, or at least internally, like it's typically, and you trust your vendor, it's a long-term relationship. I have found that it's typically kind of well-natured, and it's actually good. They genuinely believe that it's a good solution for you. Yeah, but I think it comes down to trust. I think if you've trusted your vendors all for whichever length of time you've had a partnership with, there's no reason why you should stop trusting them now that AI is part of our lives. But it's true that the wider organizations that we belong to may have, maybe concerns, or may want to implement checks and balances in terms of the trust element or the security, etc.
So I think that it comes down to practical use of whatever solution it is, because a vendor could develop the shiniest object, but it may not be applicable to your needs. So really, to me, it's all about use cases, and if something can be implemented in production, in your processes, and if it really solves your problems. Otherwise, it's just the shiny object. And even if it's not, even if it is a real solution, implementable, if it doesn't suit your needs, it's not a solution for you. So to me, you just really have to go practical, and that's why I think the identification of use cases within the organization that makes sense and matching that with the partner is a key element of the decision.
I think the shiny object metaphor is at at play on some level because Rotary just went through an RFP to find a very specific solution for a very specific challenge. And it had nothing to do with AI. It was a sort of API-related sort of connector issue. But necessarily because it was connection between a CAT tool and a CMS, the vendors that applied for the RFP were LSPs mostly. Somehow the tech companies didn't have the solution that we wanted. So even though the RFP specifically said we want a connector between two content platforms, when they were doing their demos, they were very actively promoting, oh, and this has AI, we just developed this AI solution, look, has AI built into it. And even though I think they might have thought that that would increase the appeal, like I described before, our legal really balked at that. If this connector can do exactly what you want for the purpose that you want it for, but it comes with AI, then we don't want it. So I think it's a double-edged sword at the moment to promote AI as part of your product.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you mentioned legal and talking about those relationships internally. Many of us in localization leadership space, we find ourselves stuck in the middle, right? We're stuck in the middle. There might be, especially because AI became so common, right? That's the buzzwords, we all know that. So when others, like some leadership might be thinking AI is a solution for everything and put pressure on you to jump on that wagon, and then you have legal risk management kind of putting those barriers up. How do you deal with getting out of that sticky, stuck situation, being in the middle?
I think in my experience, and this is very personal to the environment that I'm in at Rotary, there is a bit of a conspiracy going on among the team managers. So we are asked by our volunteer leadership and our executive management to explore certain AI solutions, and they, are very excited about them, especially because at Rotary, our main concern is, as a humanitarian non-profit, to reduce cost while expanding reach. And AI seems like an amazing solution for that. So a lot of people higher up and volunteers out on the ground are pushing us to explore AI. But of course, as I said, legal is really cautious about it. And so whenever we are looking to navigate this situation, we are finding that there is a lot more active and thoughtful conversation and exchange between the various team leadership to figure out why we need it, is this fit for the purpose, how can we work together to use it to the best extent possible. So we are having conversations at a theoretical and practical level among the team leadership that we didn't have before. And I think that's been really rewarding as well as kind of frustrating because every time somebody pushes something shiny and new at us, it has to go through a very sort of arduous conversation.
That's really healthy. That's really healthy because just having the discussion internally, we don't have the answers yet. A lot of organizations have not yet developed, very clear guidelines around this because it's quite new and it's changing very rapidly. And so you don't always find those guardrails that are set in place. So the discussion is really the healthiest way to get there. And I can tell you this because, as I was saying before, I see a range of maturity in the adoption of AI. And some organizations are not even thinking about it. So like when I'm talking to them, my first question is, do you have any guidelines? Does the organization have any best practices or rules that you have to follow? And in many cases, they're like, what? Do we have to? Should we think about it? And then you start that conversation. But the fact that in your organization that conversation is happening, I think is already a really good sign.
What I was going to say is, I agree, the discussion is super healthy, and we're probably in a different space where there's already a lot of regulation governance around the use of AI. In our case, it has to be highly involved in creating policy with different governments around the world in terms of responsible and ethical use of AI, etc. But where the guardrails are really crucial in our case is all the teams that are jumping on the bandwagon of Gen AI and they're just deciding to go solo and all of that. So it's a bit like the Wild West in terms of, oh yeah, you did that, but you know that technically you should be coming, you know, through our platform and our workflow and all of those things. So it's kind of educating and setting kind of guardrails and guidelines as well to enable self-serve, like to move at speed. As a huge company that we are, we need to enable that agility and that self-serve, but within certain guardrails. So to me, that's kind of the biggest challenge in terms of, I guess, governance, maybe, if I can call it that way.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think but many times we say that how much we're left out of conversations, right? We're a second thought. And it's interesting because now there's the opportunity when AI also maybe as a shiny object for those who don't have the knowledge, might strengthen even more the fact that they don't need to come and talk to us. So it's very interesting how that, I think building those relationships are very important and try to break down those silos. So, and Maria, you mentioned, you know, the Wild West. You just mentioned that. So a lot of it feels like it, right? So do you see that, how fast can we come up with guardrails? How fast can we come up with that governance? What are you seeing there when it comes to use of AI for your organization?
It's not fast enough. As in, you nearly have to come, or the instances have to come up before you think of, oh, we didn't cover that one. But it really is education, and in our case, for instance, like all of the engineers, developers, whether they uptake Gen AI to do some of the pseudo localization or at any of the stages, or if we enable AI for maybe internal communications, or sorry, Gen AI for internal communications, etc. It's education, it's relationships for sure. In terms of having that conversation, having that discussion, you're aware of what the impact is, and you know, depending on what the business impact is going to be, you should be adopting maybe an extra step rather than going full Gen AI. But yeah, it's really hard to kind of, I guess, identify upfront every single instance or every single team in an organization that might be needing or wanting to leverage Gen AI at any given point. So at least that's my experience.
Yeah, it's interesting because for us, at Rotary, where we are at the conversation now, we jumped on that opportunity as being thought leaders in the space because, again, our industry has been talking about it for so long. So now we're finding ourselves having those conversations and setting the examples of the importance of having those guardrails. Do you think that that's the kind of service vendors should be looking at?
I think it's a service I should look at. Absolutely. It's just there's so many moving pieces right now, so it's really challenging. So as I said, I think having the conversation is already a healthy way to start. So the organizations that are more mature have put together initiatives where you're formulating these guidelines. And the important thing is to have a diverse team in the conversation, which is the other piece. Yes, we are the expert on the language side, but of course legal, of course risk management. So the more diversity you have in the conversation, I think the easier or the better position you are to formalize and to define those guardrails. But yeah, maybe that's something I should add to my portfolio.
All right. Anything else from that?
Just to add that our team actually really thinks about the fact that the guardrails are hard to come up with upfront, but are necessary yesterday. So I think, in global communications at Rotary, was one of the first teams to actually draft an AI strategy document for the team that says how we shall use it, how we shall not use it, what it's going to be best suited for, etc. And when we drafted that, we did it with the input of the entire team. All of the linguists and specialists within global communications came together in a workshop to brainstorm together and come up with the guidelines. And it's also something that we emphasize to everybody. This we have drafted right now is a living document. We're going to continually update it. We're going to continually reinforce it. And that's sort of something that we're hoping will serve as a good example for the rest of the organization as well.
So how do you find that balance between risk-taking, right? We need to take risks, and the resistance that we face. Who are the players in that conversation? Who should be or not be the players in that conversation?
Everyone. Yeah, I mean, there's the, I guess, interesting tension between expectations of moving really fast and adopting AI, coming maybe from leadership. Then you have legal and compliance coming in, going like, oh, whoa, 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 hang on a second, you have to be careful. And then, information security coming in as well, going like, oh, customer data. And then, of course, you have your own teams, like other teams that are adopting Gen AI, great, but our own teams in terms of the change management, the adoption, the mindset change, all of that. So everybody has to come together, in my opinion.
Thoughts?
I mean, to go kind of joke about the answer to like when you said the selection and differentiation is done with great difficulty, finding that balance, that balance we find it to be very, very tricky. So in Rotary, we also have that sort of third stakeholder group, the members. And the members are, I think, pushing us to take more risks because they are not aware of the risks themselves. They are aware of the solutions that they present. And so, the resistance in large part, I guess, it is from risk management, it's from legal, and it's also from, sort of the creative mind sometimes or within the team. But I think mostly we want to try this, we want to explore this solution. It is just that being stuck in the middle, we're not either resistant or risk-taking, per se. We're the ones that are tasked with finding the balance. And I think that is where our roles are, and I think that's why that conversation around the organization is so important.
Interesting. And do you think when we work with our vendors, do you think that they are being more reactive to the needs we have? Because I think that's always been a point, right? Personally, at Rotary, as one who was managing a localization team more closely a while back, when we chose a vendor, period, it took us a long time. We dated for a very long time because we really see our vendors as extensions of our team, as true partners. That's how we see it. And there's no other way around it for us. So do you think that they are being reactive to the needs, or they are being more proactive, developing, thinking of the real needs of the clients?
I think right now I see a lot of proactivity, especially on the tech vendor side, not all, but some. And that's really good. I think it's encouraging. I think for a lot of clients, especially less mature clients, being able to leverage the vendor to experiment and to try things out is key. So the vendors offering certain solutions, even just at an experimentation level for the client, offers opportunities to even come up with use cases and POCs. So right now I see a lot of proactivity. It could be in part because clients are not as mature yet, they haven't figured it out yet, or maybe they just haven't had the opportunity to experiment enough to see what's applicable to them. So until now, I see that our vendors at least have solutions that we can play around with. So there's options, right? So a client, especially again, if their resources are limited, doesn't have to just explore everything and try, build something from scratch to even do some playing around. So at least right now, I see that our vendors are providing proactively some solutions that can be tested.
So can you think of specific needs? Because there's a thing, right? There's a difference between providing solutions to a problem you have, solutions that you don't know you have, and solutions to a problem you don't have or won't have at all, right? So what kinds of needs do you see now from the client perspective in managing localization, interpretation overall? What's the main interest there? What would we need it for?
I think optimizing The work of the human is always the main, is often the main focus. So again, minimizing the type of reviews that are done, right? So content tiering or using QE to decide what is reviewed or not is a main use case. I think things like source content optimization and cleanup is one that was harder to do before. And so now we have options to actually test that out and see if it affects the rest of the pipeline, right? Not just the source, but also if it actually improves the level of translation quality that we get on the other end. There's some things like, formality, gender neutrality, like those, this smaller scope improvements that the LLMs can provide. It's really great when that is provided, especially in a production environment. If your TMS provider enables those kind of features, they're ready for you to use. That's pretty huge. Those are things that were hard to do before in a systematic way. Anyway, you can always ask a human to go through a document and make sure the formality level is correct or the gender is correct, but if you can do it automatically now and it's seamlessly included in your tool, you didn't have to do anything about that. So I think that's pretty good value add.
I think just to add on to some of the use cases, definitely I agree with Alex in terms of the QE, like we're looking at automated LQA or a level of certainly automated post-editing as well. That's a huge use case for us. And again, going back to the different content types and kind of use these for each of those. Hyper automation of workflows where it's possible to do that for sure. We're also looking at language variants. So like our customers have users all around the world, and sometimes you have something like Swiss German or Swiss French or even like Colombian Spanish or or Australian or Singapore English even like. So we're kind of testing all of those out, certainly on the register, the formal versus informal and inclusive language. Like here in Spain, it's actually a legal requirement to use inclusive language, and it's something that we're really invested in at the moment because we need to, hopefully with the help of LLMs, make our product more inclusive as well. So, yeah.
One need that I think is starting to be met. Now we didn't think that, we didn't really consider a need per se, is the extraction of insights from data for the lay person in the organization, right? So we usually have a data research team dedicated to this kind of thing, but there is so much data out there within the organization, outside in the field, and everybody needs to be data driven now. Everybody needs data to make decisions. And so now, instead of having to go to the research experts to do it, there is a way to get that data for ourselves in a way sort of already compiled into the insight that we want it to give us. So one solution that we're starting to use a little bit, not everybody has access to it, I want it, but they won't give it to me, is a research portal that actually houses all of Rotary's historical research information and data, and you can type in a prompt like, why are members not staying in Rotary clubs in this region? And that engine will go through all of our data and tell us the answer. And so that is a need that we didn't think was an individual level need that we could solve for ourselves, but now it looks like we can, and that's pretty exciting for us.
Great. And I think, Alex, you mentioned source content. How is AI impacting that, and how you're dealing, or your clients are dealing with it? Are the expectations, implications for the level or the quality of source content overall?
Yeah, we're doing a lot of testing with source content and using Gen AI to generate content, and it's amazing how once you actually start testing and you show the output, then the content creators understand how it's not such an easy quick fix. What you're getting out is really not always necessarily what you would produce yourself. So we find that there's a lot of tweaking that needs to happen there. It's really not so straightforward. And those are the things that we've always worked with in localization, really looking closely at the content and tweaking it to perfect the output. And in content creation, that wasn't, there aren't as many processes for that. There aren't as many processes to measure the quality and then decide how to tweak it to improve it. I also think that the type of reviews done and the type of people who are looking at the content is different. So how our translators had to train to do PE, same with content. I think that'll have to happen. I mean, copywriters and copy editors are going to be two slightly different profiles of people, and the training will have to be different. Fact checking is going to be a big part of it with Gen AI. And maybe you can automate some of that. I think SmartLib was talking about this in one of the presentations today. We know that hallucinations and factual accuracy of these models is not always great. And so we do have to put in guardrails for that. So I think there's a lot more to figure out. And also prompting doesn't always work. Sometimes the LLMs, it's just there's a lot more unpredictability. And that's the thing with these projects these days is you have to plan for uncertainty. You have to plan for more time for trial and error. You have to plan for the unpredictability of what the LLM will do. You can't always just instruct it to do something. It may just ignore you and do what it wants anyway. So it really isn't just a push of the button. We do have to still do a lot of testing before anything is deployed to a production or customer-facing type of environment.
But just on that, we also need to rethink how do we, let's say, quality control what has been done. We need to revisit all of those checks and balances completely because we don't know what it's going to get wrong, right? So, yeah.
So you probably, if you're an LSP, you're familiar with the conundrum of having to produce good quality work from really bad source material, right? Not everybody that creates source content, are good content creators or even good writers of just normal sentences. So I guess in the before times, people, kind of knew they were good writers or bad writers. People knew, who were the good writers, and the writing work would mostly be done by the people who know how to write. But now everyone thinks that they can produce source content. And I think that is going to be a factor for us, especially, and there has been actual discussion around the structure of our intake form, which is the form that our requesters around the organization, the other teams, used to submit localization requests to us. So it has custom fields, who's the audience, how much is the reach, all of those things. And there has actually been discussion lately on whether we need to add a field that kind of asks the requester to disclose whether the source content has been created with AI or not.
Yeah, it's interesting because as we embarked on the AI journey and our team overall, was the localization team, the global content team, which is we have with us, which is basically the copy editors and making sure English is of global nature, not Americanized. Design team, so we're all part of the same group. The copy editors were the most resistant because they are the most attached to that craft. And I think helping them also understand, having that knowledge to be trained to treat the content differently when they are editing, same as post-edit, right? So the similar type of approach I think needs to happen. And there's a lot of resistance there, a lot of resistance. And the trend is that more and more content generators are going to use AI. So it's going to be an interesting journey to find that balance and bring people along.
So maybe translators can become the therapists for the copy editors.
There we go. There's a new
They've
role.
gone through it already, yeah, that transformation.
So I'll ask one more question and then we'll open to our audience. So what are some of the things that that you consider now when planning a project or anything that you were doing in the field of localization overall that you probably didn't consider before because of AI being around?
I think I mentioned a few things already. So you need to plan for uncertainty. There really isn't a definite, predictable outcome to a lot of these projects. So you need to plan more time for trial and error, that's for sure, because again, you don't know what the outcome of your experimentation or of your, of an ML project is. And so you need to plan more time for iteration and for tweaking your parameters and running through again. You also have to plan for failure. So you need to also be okay with failure being one of the outcomes. There's a lot of projects where we test different methodologies and we find that one is just not applicable and you have to change the approach completely. So I think you have to really plan that into your project. So a lot of it has to do with time. A lot of it has to do with having a plan B. And that's primarily the differences that I see with traditional, let's say, projects, where you know that if you do something from the start, you're gonna get a certain outcome. And now there's no guarantee of that. At least that's the state of the situation as of today.
Maybe different 6 months from now.
Exactly. Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think Alex has captured it beautifully, but the predictability of the traditional ways of looking at any project are gone. Now you start with the outcome, what you want to happen at the end, with the understanding that it may not happen. So you get all of the stakeholders involved. Is this still working? Yes. Everybody involved kind of on the same page in that, and kind of who needs to know of what the options might be. Whether this fails, time is super important as well, but really is kind of work backwards from the outcomes and rethink everything. In our case, we never look at projects again the same way we used to. It's like, okay, drawing board, nearly like a design, like a product design approach. It's like, what are we trying to achieve? What is available to us today? Who else can we bring into the fold to maybe a different perspective that we haven't thought of? And then kind of try maybe a couple of A/B tests to see what will the result might be.
And I think trust and transparency comes into it more now as well when we're trying to plan a project. We want to explore AI options. There are many, and like Alex said, we need to plan for that sort of exploration as well. But then, we want to be transparent when we do use those kinds of solutions because we don't want to violate the trust of our constituents. And then that becomes a little bit of a sort of fuzzy line, because when do you have to disclose, or at what point have you used enough AI in your project to disclose to the end user this was done with the help of AI, right? So if you're just using it for ideation, if you're just messing around to see what is possible and then the rest is done by human, probably not. But if you've used it to a significant but very small portion of it, does saying this was done with AI, even when the majority of the other parts were done by humans, does that help trust or hurt trust in the ability of the organization that our clients are expecting this deliverable from? So how much to use AI is an issue, but also how much to disclose, or at what point is it helpful or even valid to disclose the use of AI, I think is something that we're starting to consider.
We'll open for questions. I have a mic to go around. Questions or thoughts? We can keep talking. So don't let us.
Hi, thank you for the panel. This was really interesting. My question is, you talked about trust and reliability in many different forms, right? Trust for our users and trust in AI, what AI can produce us for localization. But there's also another aspect that I'm thinking of is we are sharing as clients millions and billions of tokens of data with our suppliers, with our partners. Do you have any guidelines or any kind of guardrails taught about how they are using very proactively, because that's something that I realized as well. LSPs became much more proactive with their services these days, and we sometimes find a solution before we even have a problem, and we try to try to fit our problems into those solutions sometimes. But there needs to be some place where we have to think about how our data is going to be fed into the other models that we are seeing more and more, because this is a world where, like, Microsoft is being sued by, like, by New York Times. So I think we should be, like, do you have any ideas about how would you implement something like that, or are you working on it already as from the client side?
Maria said it. I mean, security is top of mind. It's probably the most recognizable risk, I would say. And so I think companies do take it into considerations. The larger organizations I work with tend to build models internally or run them internally. So nothing goes out. And that's it was the same with MT in a sense. So, excuse me, sorry. In smaller organizations, really a lot don't have that conversation. And when I ask, because I make sure I ask. I mean, sometimes we do, content generation on things that are even sensitive, like on product descriptions for products that haven't been launched yet, and they don't care. Like, some organizations are just fine. They figured, well, by the time it's, part of the data being used more generally, our products will be out, it doesn't matter. So again, I've seen it kind of the whole rainbow of options, but I would say data security is the highest concern for the larger organizations.
Yeah, definitely, certainly. And in our case as well, there is also, when you use large language models for kind of external facing or public content and all of that, it's typically okay to use open, versus anything that is customer or user or actually our product, that's like we develop our own with customer data and with their permission, like transparency, and obviously that's kind of the name of the game. But I think as a society, and we're seeing this, there's a lot of policy conversations in terms of the US, the EU as well, and large companies have a social responsibility as well to be part of those conversations and to really bring everybody's concerns to the table. But internal guardrails are a help, but they're a help to that specific organization, I think. I don't know that there's anything, for instance, that we have our own policies that might be applicable to Amazon or anybody else. So, yeah.
So very good conversation. I have a question about how AI is helping you put, your agenda higher up in an organization. You understand what I was trying to ask there, right?
Have a giant opportunity in our field now, at least now. I don't know how long it'll last, but I think we can completely redefine our value. We have a treasure right now that we have been building and curating for years, which is our language data. This type of data is not so readily available across the organization. There may be organizations that have very mature technical documentation departments where even at the source content level, you have, good structured content that is tagged, metadata, and it can be really used well for training models or for using, retrieval augmented generation, these kind of things, which are at the core of, using Gen AI these days. But in the average organization, or the majority, is at least that's what I've seen, is that the only function within an organization that has this type of quality data, good quality structured language data in the source content as well, in the source language as well, but also in all the other languages, localization. And I mean,
these days we're not loving TMSs. We think they're going to be obsolete, and we're wondering like if they're still serving our purpose. They have. They've helped us build this incredible, golden treasure chest of data that now can be used by organizations to really train models to fit their needs, to comply with tone of voice and brand of a specific company. We can intelligently and competently talk about this stuff. So we should now be involved in the majority of these projects. And famously, AI projects should include very diverse teams. And so we need to be on these teams. And I think now more than ever, we can really break out of our silos and be seen as experts. Sorry, I don't want to hog the floor.
All right, we are at time, but
No. I just wanted to add, like, when the CEO speaks publicly about how AI is enabling growth in a specific market, you're like, oh yeah, that's us. Great, thanks. So yeah, absolutely. It definitely puts us on the map. Yeah, definitely.
I think for maybe the first time in ever, people are coming to our team for insight and expertise on how to use AI, because now they're finally realizing, oh, localization has been using AI for almost a decade already. And so that's not something that's been a common experience for us. We are often an afterthought. We're often the last people to be notified of a project. Sometimes we only find out that there's a project afoot because we suddenly find material at our doorstep needing to be localized. But now, we are in a rare position, like Alex said, of being able to be recognized for an expertise that nobody else thought we had or thought they needed to get. So I think that's very exciting.
thank you all so much for sticking with us after lunch. Hard to beat that, lunch sluggishness, but thank you so much. Great, and we'll see you for the rest of the conference. Thank you.